Welcome to the G5 Hive and our next installment of our Worker Bee series, where we deep dive into the G5 college football landscape with the folks that know the teams the best. If you're watching on YouTube, please hit that like and subscribe button. And if you're listening in podcast form, please rate and review. Today, we'll be taking a look at the Utah State Aggies, who finished 6-7 in 2023 and capped off their season with an appearance in the famous Idaho Potato Bowl. They wrapped up their 2024 spring practice with spring game on April 20th. We have a special guest joining us today. He is the owner, publisher, editor, and recruiting specialist for the only website for Utah State Aggie football and hoops recruiting, the Big Blue USU Aggie News. He is happily married to Amber and a father of 6. He is Brian Phillips. Brian can be found at Brian Phillips A1 on X. Welcome to the show, Brian.
Justice, thank you for having me on. I appreciate it. Really excited for the opportunity.
We're excited to have you. This is the last of our 64 interviews, and I feel like we saved one of the best for last. A lot of things going on, and excited to get into that. But yeah, we're definitely excited to have you and hear some more about the Utah State Aggies for sure.
We got a lot going on here.
Absolutely. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what led you to covering Utah State Aggie football and basketball, and how long you've been doing it.
So I'm a lifetime Aggie fan. Dad's an Aggie, grandpa's an Aggie. So I was born and raised an Aggie. I kind of started doing the coverage part of Utah State independently, probably about 10 years or so ago. 12 maybe. Got picked up by 24/7 Sports. They saw my stuff and brought me on board. And I covered the Aggies for 24/7 Sports for, probably 5 years or so. And once they started making a bigger push towards the P4 and not such a large focus on the G5, I decided I was going to try and do my own independent thing again. Had a good friend create a website for me, Big Blue USU Aggie News. And I've been doing my own independent thing again ever since. So that's where I stand today.
And you do a great job, man. I really enjoyed your positional previews, and then you cover basketball as well. And we don't talk much basketball, but it's just great to kind of see the G5 get some coverage, because it's just like you said, like with 24/7 and mainstream media, it's just so non-existent in today's world. And so I'm excited to kind of see someone with some passion covering the Utah State Aggies.
Definitely a lot of passion here.
So recently, Blake Anderson was relieved of his duties as head coach. Nate Dreiling was named the interim head coach. He was new to the Aggies this season as the defensive coordinator and the defensive end coach. What will this mean for Utah State here in 2024?
Off the top of my head, it brings a tad of uncertainty. It'll be Nate Dreiling's first head coaching gig. He is, at 33 years old, the youngest FBS football coach in the country. So it's going to be learning on the fly. He's going to have to trust his assistant coaches, and everybody's just going to have to pull together and kind of lift each other up and get through camp and get on to Robert Morris and into the season.
So with Anderson News, I think it opened up a window for the players themselves to kind of enter the portal, a 30-day window. But so far, we've only seen wide receiver Micah Davis kind of take that opportunity. Are there any other players we should be concerned about at this point, or you think like that's probably it?
So there was a second player, another wide receiver, Zachary Black. He was a redshirt freshman. He was actually the first to jump.
Okay.
I don't believe he's landed anywhere yet. Southern California kid that had a chance to make some noise in a year or two. But Micah Davis definitely surprised for one, big blow for another. I mean, to lose a starter just a week before training camp starts or just days before training camp starts. He was on several all conference watch lists, so that's tough to lose. With about, I'm guessing 8 or 9 days left before that 30-day window closes, I don't anticipate anybody else leaving. If that were to occur, I would say it could possibly be somebody that finds themselves already far enough down the depth chart that they're unhappy with their role and is going to try and make a jump. But, to try and find a role someplace else in mid-August is really tough. So that's why I don't really anticipate anybody taking off at this point in time.
Yeah, it would seem like if someone jumped at this point, unless they were, one of the top players, that they'd have, and even then, like, I can't imagine many schools have spots open, right? Have
Right.
availability. So the risk of you basically sitting out a year, I would think it would be pretty high at this point.
Right. The only way I could see anything potentially happening is if it was somebody that had enough eligibility on the front end that maybe they could jump to like a JUCO or something like that.
Sure. So for those not familiar with Utah State's offensive style, how would you describe it? And will the loss of Blake Anderson have any impacts on that offensive style?
So I would describe the offense as very much wide open. You're talking 3 wide receivers. You can spread the tight end out to make it a 4 wide receiver set or a 4 receiver set, 1 back, classic 1 back formation. They'll spread the wide receivers out to the sideline to sideline as wide as they can go, and try and just open up the entire field. They can move the tight end in or off the line of scrimmage, out into the slot, like I just mentioned, but very much 3 to 4 out and running back style of offense. Very spread out.
Do you think there'll be?
Go ahead. Sorry, Justice.
No, I was just going to say, do you think there's going to be any impacts with Anderson gone? Do you think there might be some
I would definitely say losing Coach Anderson, would be a big deal. One, he was the primary play caller, and quarterbacks coach as well. So just losing a coach with his level of experience, calling plays, being involved with the offense, that's a huge loss. Just the fact that now you've gone from you've lost your most experienced coach on the staff.
Do you think, like, from a personnel standpoint, we're going to see a lot of changes, or you think it's going to be pretty similar to what we saw with under Coach Anderson?
I don't anticipate any personnel changes whatsoever. Wide receiver coach Kyle Cephalo was Coach Anderson's right-hand man. He's been elevated to offensive coordinator, co-offensive coordinator, I should say, as well. But he's going to be the play caller, and he's not going to change a thing. It's just going to be business as usual, and roll what they had been working on into the spring, right into the fall, and into the season.
Well, one thing we know for sure, and that's whoever plays quarterback this season for the Aggies will be new to the team this offseason. They saw Levi Williams graduate and move on to starting his Navy SEAL dream. Cooper Legat transfers to, I believe, Tulsa. McKay Hillstead off to BYU. They both transferred, I guess, kind of either near the end or after spring practice. And then they bring in Spencer Petros from Iowa, Bryson Barnes from Utah, Jake McConover from BYU. And then after spring, they secured a commitment from Boise State quarterback CJ Tiller. Post-spring, it was announced that Petros was announced the starter. How has he looked in fall camp, and do you think he has a pretty heavy stronghold on the job? Or
so Spencer Petros will definitely be the starting quarterback, barring any kind of injury suffered in fall camp. He will be the starting quarterback when we roll out August 31st against Robert Morris. He's got a big, strong arm. He's got a nice touch on the deep ball. And that's a staple of the Aggie offense. We like to go deep and kind of spread that defense as thin as we possibly can. He's got good pocket sense and is able to maneuver in the pocket, and keep his eyes downfield, and is able to make his checkdowns and reads and not just focus on one or two guys in the pattern. He's not a super mobile guy, but he's mobile enough that if he's forced to leave the pocket, he's going to make a defense pay for their over pursuit. So Spencer Petras has been pretty impressive. He was a lot better when I first saw him in spring ball. He was much better than I thought he would be, especially being out all of the 2023 season with an injury. So he came in ready to go and picked the offense up really quickly. So that tells me that he's also an intelligent, a smart quarterback. So, and extremely seasoned. I mean, he spent 5 years at Iowa. So he started in 31 of 37 games at Iowa. And so he's played against top flight talent in the Big Ten. So not a lot that you're going to throw at him is going to phase him at this point in time in his career.
Has he talked about the stark contrast from going from Iowa to Utah State, where in Iowa, I feel like the quarterback's job is to not lose the game, right? You don't have to go win the game for me, but you better not lose it. Whereas at Utah State, I would characterize as probably, hey, your job is to go win this game for me.
Yeah.
Has he talked about that kind of change, or?
So I think he hit on that briefly at Media Day for the conference a couple of weeks ago. But for sure, Iowa typically wants a game manager, right? And here, I think that's probably what appealed to him most when he was first approached about coming to Utah State, is that he's going to get a chance to kind of come out and sling the ball, and he's going to be able to sling the ball a lot. And we scored over 30 points per game last year and relied heavily on the pass. And I think that is something that will appeal to quarterbacks. And it definitely appealed to Spencer Petras, and he jumped right in January and has made the most of it. And in the wake of Coach Anderson's dismissal, Spencer has been a very calming influence in the locker room, not only with the offensive guys, but the defensive guys as well. He's been letting guys know, hey, man, you need to stick around here. Don't jump ship, because we're going to do something special.
Well, how has the rest of that quarterback room looked so far this fall? I know I, for one, was super excited about the commitment from C.J. Tiller, because I thought he was a really, nice-looking, promising quarterback there at Boise State. And, I'm really excited about his future in particular there for the Aggies.
So, yeah, we just held our first fall camp scrimmage yesterday. So Bryson Barnes, the transfer from Utah, took the second team snaps. C.J. Tiller took the third team snaps, and then Jacob Conover, who actually spent last year at Arizona State, he took the fourth team snaps. So each guy has their strengths and weaknesses. Barnes has shown a big jump to me from spring to fall. And that's good. That means that he spent a lot of time in the summer working out some kinks and picking up the offensive scheme and stuff like that. Tiller is a very mobile dude. He's a mobile guy. He can get out and kind of run a little bit, more of your classic dual threat type dude. And Jacob Conover, coming out of high school, that guy was a high 4-star recruit, offered from Alabama and several SEC schools and Pac-12 schools. And so he's very much a classic drop back kind of guy too. And so everybody's got a contrast to their game a little bit, but right now Spencer Petras clearly stands out as the number one guy.
Well, moving over to the running game, they lost their leading running back from a season ago in Devon Booth, who transferred to Mississippi State. But they did return Rasul Faison and Robert Briggs from a year ago. They combined for over 1,100 yards and 7 touchdowns. They also bring in JUCO All-American Nick Floyd. How has that running back room been shaping up so far?
The running back room is coming along. Again, starting over with a bunch of new faces, but we have the two holdovers from last season. Robert Briggs, 11 games, 3 starts, 80 carries, 420 yards, 2 scores. Senior, Rasul Faison, 13 games, 3 starts, 180 carries, 736 yards, 5 scores. So that's going to be a solid 1-2 punch. It was described to me that Robert Briggs actually had the better spring ball out of Briggs, Faison, and departed Devon Booth. So I would expect Briggs to really see an increase in productivity this year. I think he's going to make a big jump, and it's going to be pretty impressive because that kid can fly. And Rasul's not a slouch either, but he's definitely a bigger back. He goes about 200 pounds, and if he gets into the secondary and a safety or a corner tries to get in his way, he's going to make you pay.
Well, last season it was kind of a 3-headed monster between Booth, Faison, and Briggs. Do you envision it to be a 3-headed monster again? And if so, who that third person is? Or do you think it's mostly going to be Briggs and Faison?
I would expect primarily Briggs and Faison this year. I think in a perfect world, we brought in a pretty highly touted high school kid named Herschel Turner. The kid had an amazing senior season. He ran for 3,000 and something yards his senior season. Like you said, JUCO All-American Nick Floyd. I think in a perfect world, you'd try and play each guy 4 games if you found a way to fit them all in. And we brought another junior college kid in that's a sophomore from Iowa Central, Derek Jameson. So if you could fit each guy in sporadically and still save a redshirt year for each guy, that would be, I think, the dream scenario as far as the program is concerned. Whether that works out that way or not is a whole other situation.
Absolutely. So who do you think is the first carry for a running back versus Robert Morris?
Based off what went on yesterday, I'll say Robert Briggs. But it's 1A and 1B. So I mean Briggs and Rasul Faison are definitely your 2 primary backs.
Do you think Faison being the bigger guy is going to be the guy, the short yards or goal line guy, if you will?
No, not necessarily, because they're both low to the ground, strong runners. And Rasul can definitely break it. He can take it the distance from anywhere. So Briggs is a smaller but more mobile running back. He catch the ball out of the backfield a little bit better and stuff like that. He did a lot of that in high school as well. So that they are going to complement each other really well. You could see one guy one snap and one guy the next, and either guy are capable of taking it the distance from anywhere on the field.
All right, let's get back to that passing game and look at the wide receivers. So Terrell Vaughn graduates, leaving 2023 standout Jalen Royals as the man for the Aggies here in 2024. The aforementioned Micah Davis, who was the 3rd leading receiver a year ago, recently transferred to Ole Miss. They returned just about everyone else. They also bring in Jack Estera from Charlotte and a JUCO All-American Robert Freeman. How has that wide receiver room looked, and how are they kind of shaping up behind Jalen Royals?
Not bad. They're starting to take shape. The 2 deep at least is starting to round out. It's going to be a collection of pretty much the same guys that were here last year. So I don't think there'll be a ton of surprises as far as that goes. Jalen Royals is on everyone's all-conference lists. He's made several preseason All-American lists, frequently being mentioned as being potential 2nd, 3rd team All-American candidate. He's on the Blitnikoff watch list. So Jalen Royals is definitely the man as far as what's being looked at right now.
Do you think he's in for like a really, really big season, or you think they might try to spread it around some as well? Or
the way the offense is built, the quarterback is going to take what's given. Jalen's definitely going to get his, but it will definitely be spread around, much like you saw last year between Terrell Vaughn and Micah Davis, and obviously Jalen. So Jalen kind of snuck up on everybody last year. He played here as a sophomore as well. I think he only caught one pass as a sophomore, and then jumps out last year and just explodes and broke the school record for receiving touchdowns in a season with 16. I mean, it just completely blew everybody away. But he'll definitely be a focus of opposing defenses. But the way Coach Cefalo is going to spread things out, things are still going to open up for him.
So it seems like a lot of folks, and maybe not necessarily Utah State folks, but just college football folks in general, were really excited about the addition of Robert Freeman. And I think the excitement really comes from looking at his size and trying to say, oh, he's the next Terrell Vaughn, or he's the next Devin Tompkins, because he kind of fits the mold of those kind of guys. But
right.
How has he looked in the spring and so far here in fall camp?
He's still a work in progress. He does compare very favorably to Terrell Vaughn, and that's actually why he's wearing number 0. Is Terrell wore 0, so Robert wanted 0 as well. Right now he stands about 3rd on the depth chart, but it's still early in fall camp, and things can happen, and you can still make a move and definitely work your way up into a higher snap count.
Is there anyone kind of standing out to kind of take that next step like Royals did last season, or kind of still to be determined?
I think it's kind of still to be determined. That other wide receiver spot is still kind of wide open. Micah Davis was slated to play the wide receiver spot opposite Jalen Royals. It's open right now. Otto Tia, a junior, it's been in the program for 4 years, is up there, and Colby Bowman, a returner from last year, is still battling for that spot as well. Bowman was a highly recruited player that originally went to Stanford and joined us last year and had a decent season as maybe our 4th receiver or so. So those two are definitely battling out for that opposite receiver. Grant Page is a sophomore. He came in last year as a transfer from the University of Colorado. He's lined up behind Jalen Royals, and he had a great spring. I mean, Grant Page had an outstanding spring, in my opinion, and so I think he'll make some noise with some time that he gets this year as well.
So if you had to make a prediction, if it was up to you, maybe the best way to say it, if it's up to you, who do you think are the 3 guys they're rolling out there week 1 versus Robert Morris for the receivers?
Jalen Royals, absolutely. At this point in time, I wouldn't be shocked to see Colby Bowman end up taking snap 1. And then in the slot, Kyrese White. I think Kyrese White will definitely be the slot guy.
And Kyrese, I think, was someone that looked good in the spring too, right? Wasn't
absolutely?
Micah wasn't there, so
had an absolutely outstanding spring ball.
Awesome. All right, moving over to the tight ends. If you were to describe how the tight ends are utilized in this offense to someone who has never seen a Utah State game, how would you describe it?
Based off the past, I would say not very well. Definitely overlooked. There's a tight end on the field most of the time and extremely underutilized. This season, I don't think that's going to be the case. I think you'll see the tight end be a big part of the offense. And the reason I think that is because with Spencer Petras coming from Iowa, they are taught that the tight end is your best friend. I mean, Iowa is famous for churning out NFL talent. And Spencer has come in and really taken a liking to the tight end room and continues to tell them and boost that group's confidence by saying, hey, man, keep an eye on me because I'm looking for you. That may not have been the way it was in the past. It's not going to be that way this year. And so I think the tight ends are really going to take a big jump as far as production goes. We've got a graduate junior, Brock Lane, who's made several preseason all conference lists. He started 10 of 11 games last year, caught 21 passes for 208 yards and a score. But he's a dude that has kind of been snake bit a little bit through his career with some injuries. But if he'll stay healthy like he did last year, he's a real strong blocker, but a great route runner, a real threat up the seams and in the middle of the field, and can contribute some yards after the catch as well. And I think you'll see him take a big jump this year with Spencer Petras as his quarterback.
That's an excellent point. I hadn't really kind of put that together, in regards to Spencer and, the Iowa and how tight ends are utilized there. But yeah, that makes a lot of sense that would necessitate or kind of help the tight end production there for the Aggies.
Yeah. Big difference.
So on paper, the offensive line looks to be in pretty good shape heading into 2024. I would say maybe if there's an issue, maybe it's probably the depth. But they do return 5 players who started a lot of games from a year ago. They do lose Ralph Frias III to transfer, and Wade Meacham, Calvin Knapp, and Jackson Owens to graduation. I only saw one addition via the portal, so I got to assume that the staff feels pretty good about the offensive line. How have they looked in the spring and the start of fall camp?
It's been pretty strong. It's been a pretty positive carryover, and so that's kind of been that's been rare at Utah State for a while. We've kind of had offensive linemen jump ship, especially with the addition of the introduction, I should say, of the transfer portal. It's been kind of tough to hang on to some dudes, but we've got a good group, and we've got some guys that saw a lot of time, and we're returning a group that's got some starting experience under their belt. And so I feel pretty good about the offensive line. And I think the coaching staff does as well. These guys really, really love Cooper Bassett, the offensive coordinator. Well, he's the co-offensive. He's been elevated to co-offensive coordinator as well, but the offensive line coach. These guys will do anything for that guy and speak very highly of him. So they're a really experienced, well-coached group at this point in time.
All right. If you had to pick an offensive player to have a breakout type season here in 2024, who are you going to pick, Brian?
I'm going to go with Kyrese White. Oh, he had a great spring. He's had a solid summer, good week of first camp. Last season, he's been at Utah State for 2 years. He transferred in from the University of Utah. So far over his career, he's only caught 3 passes for 8 yards. I think he'll surpass that week 1. So Kyrese White is going to be the starter at the slot, and he will definitely be the breakout player of this offense.
Awesome. Let's move over to the defensive side of the ball. For those not familiar with the Aggies defense they'll be using this year, can you describe that style and scheme that Coach Dreiling plans to run?
More often than not, you're definitely going to see a 4-2-5. So four-man front, 2 linebackers, your traditional corner safety, and a nickel. And that's how it'll go.
In that 4-2-5, I'm assuming they have like one of the safety positions is kind of like a hybrid linebacker / safety, or
no, it'll be a traditional free and boundary safeties. Your 2 staple corners, and then just your nickel guy. You may see that change, like maybe against a heavier run team, but with most Mountain West schools, with the exception of Air Force, they're very pass heavy and like to spread things out, kind of like we do. So you're going to see us employ the nickel back much more than maybe say a third linebacker or a hybrid rover safety type thing.
Gotcha. Okay. So let's talk about the guys up front along that defensive line. The Aggies will miss promising youngster Paul Fitzgerald, who transferred to Utah, and Hale Motu Apuaka, who graduated. They also bring in a lot of transfers along that defensive line. How has this room looked in the spring and the start of fall camp? And is there anyone kind of standing out so far?
So it's definitely a work in progress. We've got a lot of new faces, and that can kind of slow the process down a little. Especially when you brought so many guys in over summer as well. So it's that they went with a lot of different guys and a lot of different combinations during the scrimmage yesterday. So that tells me that things are still very much wide open all across the board there. We do have some holdovers at end, definitely. Blaine Spires and Kean Sloan both played for the Aggies last year, both seniors, so guys that have got some experience. We had a late addition, Gabe Peterson, followed Coach Dreiling and the New Mexico State guys here. Gabe at New Mexico State last year started 15 games, picked up 55 tackles, 8 tackles for loss, 3.5 sacks. So he was a big addition. That's an all-conference type guy that we just added to the rotation. So defensive tackle wise, we really only have 2 guys that were here last year that returned. Sini Tuiaki and Bo Miley, both are back this year. Sini started all 13 games, 25 tackles, 3.5 tackles for loss. So Bo played in 11 games, 14 tackles. But a lot of this is based off of the guys that have come in and transferred. So they've got a lot to figure out in a short amount of time.
So obviously, a lot's going to change here in the next 2 weeks or so.
Right.
But, if you had to make a guess on who you think is out there, Snap One versus Robert Morris, who do you think that is?
Well, I've always had this saying when it comes to the defensive line. There's always starter A and starter B because they rotate so often. Yeah. So, it's not who's first or second on the depth chart. I don't think that guy that may be listed as second on paper really feels that bad because I think they all get about the same amount of reps from, first quarter to fourth quarter. But if we had to roll out a group today, I would say Blaine Spires would probably start at one end. I think Inoka Mageo, another returner from last year, would probably start at the other defensive end. And as far as your nose tackle goes, Sini Tuiaki has been hurt most of summer and spring. If he can return in time for Robert Morris, I think it would be Sini. If not, I think they'd roll out Charlotte transfer Miguel Jackson at nose tackle. And at defensive tackle, I think New Mexico State transfer Gabriel Iniguez would probably be the guy that takes snap one. So he was here for all of spring ball and has been here all summer and really done a good job and stepped up as kind of a leader in a group that with so many new faces, you got to have somebody step up. You're kind of leaderless until somebody steps up and takes that role. And it seems like Iniguez has kind of done that.
Well, like the defensive line, the linebackers also lose their top player from 2023 and leading tackler MJ Tafisi Jr. graduated. They do return promising youngster Logan Peely and Cole Joyce, and they also bring in a couple of transfers as well. Who needs to step up in that linebacker room for this defense to be successful here in 2024?
This is another group that's kind of got a lot of questions. We've got some guys that missed some time with some injuries. Last year, promising sophomore Max Alford got hurt on the very first snap of the Iowa game. That was their first game last year, tore his ACL, and has missed the rest of the year, missed all of spring ball. He's working his way back. We've got a lot of question marks here too, with several transfers added. So we added Division II All-American John Ross May from Lenore Rhine, played 15 games last year, racked up 116 tackles, 15.5 tackles for loss, 2.5 sacks. So that's a guy that comes in with a lot of numbers behind his name. Some of the other transfers that come in, such as John Miller, come in from Oregon State, Clyde Washington from Purdue. He had 3 starts in 12 games last year with 21 tackles. So some of these guys that have moved down from P4 schools, we're hoping that they'll step up and kind of fill those roles that were vacated by graduation and transfers.
Is there a leader in the clubhouse yet, or who do you think might step into that MJ Tafisi Jr. role yet? Or
if I had to pick somebody right now, I'd probably say graduate transfer Clyde Washington from Purdue. I think he could maybe be the Mike linebacker against Robert Morris week 1.
So, that's a great lead to the next question. Who do you think would join Washington there as the other linebacker there against Robert Morris?
Like I said, we saw a lot of different combinations yesterday. Utah transfer Jaden Pearson saw a lot of snaps. Like I mentioned, John Ross May, Cole Joyce is definitely in the mix. If I had to pick one guy out right now, I'd go with Jaden Pearson, the transfer from Utah. He's been here since January and has seen a lot of what Coach Dreiling, his game plan is and schematically. So I'd throw Jaden Pearson name out there first.
Well, let's move over to the defensive backfield, and they may have taken some of the biggest hits this offseason, losing Anthony Switzer and Devin Dye to transfer, but they do return second leading tackler Ike Larson, and they brought in a transfer Jordan Vincent. How has that room looked so far in this fall?
Again, some new faces, but experienced faces when it comes to this group. So they added Jordan Vincent. I've got him penciled in as my starter at the boundary safety, strong safety spot. Came from New Mexico State, 15 games, 65 tackles, 3 tackles for loss, 2 sacks. Honorable mention, Conference USA. So this is a dude that's seen a lot of action, and with already being a starter in Coach Dreiling's defensive scheme in New Mexico State, he's just going to jump in seamlessly and know exactly what's going on. It's like having another coach out on the field. So that'll be a big positive for everyone that is playing out in front of him. Isaac Larson, obviously, he's on everybody's Mountain West all-conference lists. He's made several All-American lists. The kid is just an athlete, got a great sense of the ball and knows how to read the field and read the quarterback. I know he worked really hard this offseason on limiting mistakes and misreads and stuff like that. So I think that he's got a chance this year to really, really elevate his game. And he was already pretty dynamic. Anytime he'd intercept the ball, he had a chance to take it to the house. He blocked several kicks last year, and he's just a really dynamic player when he's out on the field.
Who else do you think might join Vincent and Larson there in the defensive backfield week 1?
So at the nickel back, I think Jaden Francois, graduate senior, will be the starting nickel. He was here last year, 12 games, 7 starts, 57 tackles, 3.5 tackles for loss, sack, had a pick that he took back to the house last year. So Jaden Francois definitely there. At your 2 corner spots, I think Davin Graham, transfer from Oklahoma, will probably take one of those spots. He missed last season at Oklahoma with a knee injury, so he redshirted. But prior to that at Oklahoma, 28 games, 12 starts, 72 career tackles, 2 interceptions. So another guy that, even though he missed last year, much like Spencer Petras, is battle tested against top flight competition. He's definitely seen the best of the best when it comes to playing in the Big 10 at Oklahoma, or the Big 12, at Oklahoma. The opposite corner of Davin Graham, I think it'll be Avante Dickerson. He came in from Oregon late last summer. It took him a while to acclimate himself with the defensive scheme. But once he got in and got going, he played in 11 games. He had 7 starts, credited with 7 tackles, broke up 6 passes. He's got a chance to really make a name for himself this year.
With the loss of Switzer and Dye and the change in there of the coaches on the defensive side, do you think that's going to affect how Ike Larson was used, last year compared to this year? Or do you think like we can expect to see another high number of tackles from him once again?
So the departure of Switzer, I don't really think will affect Ike much, because Switzer, once Max Alford got hurt at the will linebacker, spot last year, they weren't really comfortable with anybody that they had behind Alford. And so Switzer spent the entire season playing out of place and played the will linebacker spot. And that's where Devin Dye ended up stepping up into that strong safety spot. So 2 guys kind of vacated the same spot, but they won't really, it's not going to affect Isaac much at all. Especially adding an experienced guy, like I said, like Jordan Vincent. Isaac's going to be able to have free reign and just roam the field and make plays with his eyes and his feet and his speed.
If you had to pick a defensive player to have a breakout type season in 2024, who are you going to pick, Brian?
I just mentioned him, and even though he started 7 games last year, again, it kind of took him a while to get in and get going and really seeing significant stats. I think Avante Dickerson is going to prove himself to be just a lockdown cornerback. I think he'll match up likely with the opposing team's best wide receiver, and he really has that shutdown corner, not only ability, but mentality. Just a phenomenal athlete. And I think that he's going to be the guy that's really going to make a name for himself this year.
Good stuff. With fall camp starting up, which position or position groups do you feel is the most concerning?
I guess I've got 2, and we've just barely talked about them. They're both going to be on the defensive side of the ball. So the front 4 of the defense, the defensive line, and our linebackers, and it's not for lack of talent by any means. It's just the amount of new faces, and every snap that they get during fall camp is going to count. And every time one of those guys is on the field, they've got to maximize their opportunity, because I feel like it's a really, really wide open position groups, honestly. And at this point in time, who we saw take significant snaps yesterday in scrimmage 1 could absolutely be different than who jogs out against Robert Morris on August 31st. So there's just a lot of question marks, again, not because of lack of talent, but because of lack of familiarity and cohesion and experience within the scheme.
Yeah.
I'm sure the coaches wish that they had twice as much fall camp with these guys.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, they brought in a lot of guys post spring, so that's a lot of guys just kind of, trying to, I guess, get familiar with everything, right, and learn the system, learn their teammates, etc. So yeah, I definitely can see that. What would you say is the main strength of this team?
I would say the offensive line, to be honest, and that hasn't been something that's been able to be said at Utah State in quite a while. But this offensive line combined for 75 games and 45 starts, 3,557 snaps, and 162 pancake blocks. And that's just the dudes that return. So I'm talking senior Cole Motes at left tackle, left guard Wyatt Bowles, center Pule Alo, right guard Tavo Motuapuaka, and right tackle Teague Anderson. Those guys all combined for that number. And that's not something that Utah State can talk about and kind of boast about, to be honest, very often. So we've got a lot of dudes that have seen a lot of time And if we can keep everybody healthy, then it could be pretty special for those 5 up front.
When it comes to the recruitment of new players and the retention of existing players, how has NIL and the transfer portal impacted Utah State?
As far as recruitment goes, we don't. I don't believe that we promise anybody any kind of incentive coming in. It's more of a you come in and you prove it and you earn it type thing, and then it's if you prove it and you earn it, then we'll talk. So when we're bringing in the guys from New Mexico State or Davin Graham from Oklahoma, nobody's promised anything, and I think that appeals to the guys that are trying to either move up or down, from a level to try and prove their mettle, and prove that they're worth the investment and make a name for themselves. And, truth be told, NIL make a little on the side as well, correct? So as far as recruitment goes, it's not really used as a tool to try and bring in anyone. As far as retention goes, I don't think that it's really anybody's really been thrown around, so to speak, or maybe thrown at one particular player or anything. I think they try and level the playing field out between the players as far as how they spread the money around. But I can say for certain that we had a surprising amount of guys that turned down opportunities at other schools to remain Aggies. And just to throw some names out, I'm talking Jalen Royals, I'm talking Rasul Faison, I'm talking Brock Lane, Vontae Dickerson, Jaden Francois. We had guys that other schools coveted, and those dudes all chose to remain Aggies and all saw staying in Logan worthwhile to them. And it's a huge, huge compliment and a huge testament to the type of character that those guys have.
Given all the change and being kind of relatively recent change, and a lot of additions, particularly on the defensive side of the ball, what does success look like for the Aggies here in 2024?
Well, as with, I think, most programs, a lot of schools feel like 6 wins and a bowl berth is successful. And I think that shouldn't be anything that should be off the table with Utah State, regardless of with the coaching turnover and so on and so forth. I personally think that this team has the opportunity to win 7 or 8 games. I think that they have the talent to do so. And I think that the coaching staff has the belief in the kids, and the kids have the belief in the coaching staff to be able to put this thing together and make that happen. So, again, 6 wins is clearly considered a success. Going to a bowl game, clearly is considered a success. I think we can get 7 or 8 wins this season.
Well, Brian, we've kind of covered a lot of ground today with the Aggies, offense, defense, coaching changes. But is there anything else that you want to share or think that we should know about this 2024 Utah State Aggies football team?
I think that this group is going to prove a lot of the naysayers wrong. I think they're being counted out because of some of the off-season turmoil. We, as a program, suffered the loss of a young man a couple of weeks ago, Andre Selden Jr., to an accidental drowning while some of the players were out hanging out at a local reservoir. So I think they're going to rally around each other and pull things together. I think it's going to be a lot more successful season than I think most are predicting. And I think the battle cry is going to be resiliency and toughness. And they're just going to go out and love each other and go win some ball games.
Well, Brian, I just want to thank you again for taking some time out of your day to spend with us and share your knowledge. We greatly appreciate it.
I appreciate you guys reaching out and having me on the show. I'm really grateful for the opportunity. Thank you so much.
If you're watching on YouTube, please hit that like and subscribe button. If you're listening in podcast form, please rate and review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Thank you all for your support. And until the next time, we are the G5 Hive.